for joining us this evening for this special called meeting. And we've got MARTA they are going to do a presentation on the non-sales tax funding options for transit expansion. So one of the things I would like to ask MARTA to be sure that they address is that we have learned, the city of Roswell has learned, that there will not be, in MARTA's future plans, near future, there will not be a transit opportunity at Holcomb Bridge Road. So I want to make sure that we address that, but then I would like MARTA to go into any other issues or opportunities that they see that they would like to share with us. So I will turn it over to MARTA. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Henry and council members and Mohammed and Rob and Dave Clark. Y'all really have such top-notch staff, so we thank them for providing us the opportunity to be with you tonight. I'm Colleen Kiernan. I'm the Senior Director for Government and Community Affairs, and we'll do our introductions in one moment. But I'll go ahead and share my screen. Patient. Okay, so I guess as Mayor Henry sort of alluded to, I want you to think about the day sometime in early 2027 when the ribbon cutting for the express lanes opening is done, and you have two new express lanes on each side, one north, one south on Georgia 400. You have this fabulous new diverging diamond intersection at Holcomb Bridge Road, but you don't have a bus stop there. There's no bus rapid transit station there because there isn't any money right now to build it. So I want you to think about how you will feel if and when that day comes, and whether you want to at least be able to say that we really truly exhausted all of our options and it wasn't possible. So just to give you sort of an overview of what we want to do with this presentation, please interrupt us as we go. We really are hoping that this is much more conversational and informal, but we wanted to take the opportunity to get to know y'all a little bit and let you know some of the senior leadership at MARTA. And we wanted to talk about another path that we can see forward to partnering together to make the BRT project on Georgia 400 happen and station at Holcomb Ridge Road possible. And really at the end of this, our hope is that these ideas are interesting enough that we all want to learn more and we all want to keep talking. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Kevin Hurley, their Deputy Chief Financial Officer, to introduce himself.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Henry, Roswell City Council members. As Colleen said, my name is Kevin Hurley. I'm the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at MARTA, but I'm also a resident of Roswell. I've been a long-term resident of Roswell over 20 years now. You know, both of my children went to Roswell High School. My son was one of the captains on Roswell High School's first state championship lacrosse team. He's now in dental school in Florida and moving along nicely and establishing a career where he wants to come back to Roswell and practice. My daughter, she was in the top 10 in her class at Roswell High School, graduating in 2019, and she's currently playing Division I lacrosse at Wofford College in South Carolina. So, Roswell's been a tremendous part of my family from the times that, we went to daycare at Young Life there in downtown, attended the children's parades, all the way up through, participating and representing the flagship high school of the city. And I just wanted to let you all know that it's been a wonderful place. The decision to move here was purely a family decision, and my wife and I couldn't have moved to a better place, and just wanted to let you all know that.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I would also like to introduce Jacob Vallow, who's our Senior Director of Transit-Oriented Development and Real Estate.
Hello, good evening. Jacob Vallow. I'm happy to be with you this evening. This is my third year at MARTA. I spent 19 years in the private sector in investment management and private equity roles, as well as commercial development with groups like Hines and Jamestown and the Rockefeller Group, and managed money for most of my career and have been a fiduciary, and just blessed to be here with MARTA, being a fiduciary on behalf of taxpayer money. I will say that I did grow up in a city in Houston, 25 miles north of Houston, and many of the same amenities we had growing up. I had a forest behind my house, which we had a phenomenal time on. But what was interesting that struck me about this conversation, particularly around bus, was my father used to take the bus. He used to drive to the Park and Ride, and he worked in downtown Houston. And he used to drive to the Park and Ride and work on the bus on the way to work and on the way home. And that was mainly because he coached our Little League team. And my younger brother and I played baseball, and it always gave him some extra time to spend with us. So I appreciate that. But I'm happy to be here today, and I have really a kind of informal approach to things, and just want to help out as much as I can, and much as there is an interest from the city of Roswell. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacob. And as I said, I'm Colleen Kiernan. I'm the Senior Director of Government and Community Affairs, and I've been at MARTA for a little over 2 years. And the path that got me here was, most of my career was at the Sierra Club. I was the state director from 2010 to 2016. And so if you remember, that was the time the 2012 T-SPLOST happened. And so I was part of, in fact, leading sort of this odd coalition of opponents of that T-SPLOST. So the Sierra Club, of course, was arguing that it didn't do enough for transit. And since the result of that election happened, I really dedicated my career towards making transit expansion happen in Metro Atlanta through whatever means I could see possible. So I was integrally involved in the Clayton referendum in 2014, and subsequently the city of Atlanta additional halfpenny in 2016. So I'm hopeful that we can find a path forward and at least exhaust all of the ideas that are out there. So to give you just sort of a really brief overview, as you know, MARTA was formed by a state legislature, adopted the MARTA Act in 1965, which led to an unsuccessful referendum that would have funded MARTA through property taxes in 1968, and then subsequently the successful referendum in 1971 that levied a 1 penny sales tax in Fulton, DeKalb, and the city of Atlanta. And the last time MARTA expanded in a really meaningful way was in your neck of the woods with the opening of the North Springs and the Sandy Springs stations back. That date is wrong. I think it was earlier than that. But it's been quite some time, and MARTA is now in a good position. I think we have a really strong leadership team that is going to be able to execute on the expansion in both Clayton County and the city of Atlanta, and we hope throughout the region. But I guess what brings us here today is more recent 2018 legislative effort that created the Atlanta Transit Link Authority, which also allowed Fulton to levy a 0.2 cent sales tax to fund transit expansion, and then also allows y'all to renew your T-SPLOST, which we'll talk about some more. So we can certainly understand that you need all of your neighbors to cooperate with the 0.2 cent sales tax option, and perhaps it's not palatable anyway. And then the T-SPLOST option is you also have a lot of other priorities for those funds. And so we really wanted to shake the tree and figure out what other options we could come up with. So this is just another brief history. What sort of transit is going to come up Georgia 400 has been a conversation since, in my research, as far back at least as 1989. But the plan that we have before us today is taking advantage of the investment that GDOT is putting in the express lanes in Georgia 400 by having buses run in those express lanes in a really quick and reliable service with 4 stops. I guess 5 total when all is said and done, we hope. So North Springs, Holcomb Bridge Road, North Point Mall, Old Milton Parkway, we hope someday, and Windward Parkway. So that's the plan on the table. And as the Commissioner of Transportation, Russell McMurray, said at a recent meeting, we are on the launching pad. We're ready to go. And the designer, the contractor, GDOT will be selecting sometime later this year. Construction is expected to start sometime in, I think, 2022. And the project is expected to be substantially complete by 2027. So this is imminent, and we don't really have much time to do anything else. So I'm going to turn it over to Kevin to just tell you a little bit about some of the work that MARTA has been doing to be ready for these changes over the last few years.
Thanks, Colleen. Yeah, I've been asked to speak a little bit about MARTA's financial health, and certainly after the downturn in 2006 through 2008, it was a tough time for a lot of government entities to get back in financial shape. Over the last 9 years, MARTA has shown a budget surplus. We are also going to show one this year, even with the COVID impact inclusive. We will show a positive surplus this year. Over the last 10 years, we've also increased our bond rating by 2 notches. And this little chart here shows that, Fitch is still affirming us at AA minus, but our best ratings are with S&P at AA plus and Moody's at AA. We've also had the strongest triennial review from the FTA that we've had since I've been here, and I've been here over 20 years. And the MARTOC, there's a quote on here from the MARTOC presentation, which is our government oversight committee at the state, that said MARTA is absolutely in better condition administratively than we were 8 years ago when the audit was previously conducted. So MARTA is moving in the right place, in the right direction. We are very good stewards of the funds that the public entrusts with us. I personally treat every expenditure that I approve as something, would I approve it myself for my home? And I look at it that way because I am a taxpayer in Fulton County. So we've come a long way. This has really set a good stage for us moving forward as these expansion projects roll into our near-term future. And we look forward to moving forward with the city and Clayton's efforts, and then as well any efforts that we can accommodate in Fulton County, North Fulton County.
So I told Kevin I wanted to talk about this slide because I'm the one who had it created, which explains how our money gets to us and where it goes. So there's a lot going on here, so just bear with me for a minute. So the penny at the top shows roughly how the sales tax that is levied in Fulton, DeKalb, City of Atlanta, and Clayton County is distributed. So Fulton County is roughly about 1/3. So you can probably assume that that's about 2/3 comes from North Fulton and 1/3 comes from South Fulton. But the City of Atlanta and DeKalb County are also, equal contributors, and then Clayton County, is basically getting what they paid for when they joined in 2014. So our funds go into 2 different buckets. We have our operating funds, which gets the system, the buses out on the streets every day, provides the bus operators, etc. And then we have the capital side of the program, which is on the right. So you can see that the sales tax, if you follow the arrows, is roughly split in half. We're not subject to the 50-50 handcuffs like we were for most of our history, but that sales tax on the operation side is met with revenue from the fares, federal operating assistance. This year we had federal relief money and other sources of revenue, and primarily it's spent on the labor to provide the service. And then on the capital side, this is everything that, is sort of the hard objects that are required to provide the service. So that's everything from both the buses and the rail cars to the stations, to the operations and maintenance facilities, all the physical things that we need to provide the service. And so you can kind of follow the money the same way. But we're in good financial shape. We've balanced the budget for 9 years in a row, and we look to be able to do that again in the future. So now Kevin is going to sort of just tell you why we don't have enough money though to fund capital expansion projects because, well, let him talk about it.
Yeah, this slide that Colleen is showing is the capital improvement program for the next 10 years. And what the slide represents is the asset categories that she was alluding to in regards to hard asset rehab and rehabilitation, as well as systems that we need in like train control, fire prevention, tunnel ventilation, all those types of systems that we have to have to safely and effectively run our operations. And so what you're seeing here is a 10-year capital improvement program that is just for the replacement and rehabilitation of existing assets that is in the neighborhood of $3.1 billion. And so we have a huge, and this is just what's the fundable piece of the capital program. There are elements below the funding line that are in a backlog state that equate to 1 or 2 billion additional dollars that we are not including in this program at the moment. So, you know, taking funds from here to support an extension is not helping keep the existing system in a state of good repair. So, you know, and certainly we could get into details of all these individual projects that fall into these asset classes, you know, if you all would like to at some point.
Great, thanks, Kevin. I'll also point out here, though, that MARTA has committed to pay for the operations and maintenance of a bus rapid transit route on Georgia 400, should one exist. So it's really just the capital funding that is the gap. But I'm going to turn over to Jacob, and he's going to tell you a little bit about the bus service that serves North Fulton now.
So the bus planning and operations is not in my group, but I volunteered to take these slides because when I came to MARTA, I looked at really an analysis of where some of our bus routes were traveling and whether or not they connected to major employers and major nodes, and it was a pretty interesting discovery. And you know, if you go to the next slide, Colleen. This particular route, 143, is not much different, and you know, I think it's really important, and I guess because I'm new at MARTA, I can say this, that you know, I think we can do a much better job in terms of connecting the amenities and the density, the areas of density within communities, so that the transit component has a much larger impact on economic development and creates a better sort of lifestyle opportunity for the communities. I think what's exciting, if you go to the next slide, Colleen, is the CEO and the board have already initiated a bus network redesign. And so kind of taking these ideas I just mentioned, MARTA is leaning into being more intentional about the bus routes. And if the consultant we've engaged hasn't reached out to city staff just yet, they will be, to really do a listening session to understand how we could design our network much better for the Roswell community. Colleen?
Great. And also I'll say, so for example, I know that east-west connectivity is a big deal. So that is certainly something that could be addressed in this bus network redesign. I was thinking about it and looking at, I'll go back here, the 142, which travels east on Holcomb Bridge Road. I mean, why, you know, the fact that it has to stop at the county line seems super dated, and probably we could enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Gwinnett County and swing through Peachtree Corners and connect down to Doraville Station. So there would be another way to get to the heavy rail system. So those are the types of things that we'll be looking at over the next year. But this is what's going to happen if we don't identify capital funding to construct the bus rapid transit program. So our current Route 143 that serves North Springs to Windward Parkway will continue, and instead of just traveling in the general purpose lanes on Georgia 400, it will merge over into the express lanes and basically provide that express service. So if there is a station at Holcomb Bridge Road, it could stop there. Turn it back over to Jacob.
Yeah, I also asked to talk about this particular slide because I think that for someone who's not, in the daily transit world, bus rapid transit is just another acronym. And for me personally, when I came to MARTA, it was something that I had to become familiar with. And bus rapid transit essentially, although our transit colleagues don't like to necessarily call it a train on wheels, if you will, but essentially that's what it is. And which I think is exciting because from a cost perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And so this is just a rendering of really an engineer based on engineer drawings of a bridge, which you see on the top portion that connects to a proposed park and ride area that then ultimately the patrons can walk down to, if you go to the next slide, Colleen, to an area where they have the opportunity to wait in a covered area and then board the buses, obviously going north and south. And so from a transit-oriented development perspective, there's a lot of interest in, what I typically do for MARTA on a daily basis is work with private sector developers to bring projects close to our stations to increase the potential demand for ridership as well as earn income for the authority, which helps diversify our revenue streams. But so this is, just to give you an idea of what the early design work that's been done and by MARTA, just give you a sense of what the bus rapid transit project could look like.
All right, so there's kind of a lot going on this slide as well, but really what I wanted to focus your attention on is this. As you recall, part of the House Bill 930 deal was that there was going to be $100 million from the state to support transit, and it was designated for this project. So the phase one line essentially shows you where those funds have gone. Primarily, it's acquiring the additional right-of-way that is needed for the express lanes for the bus to have, for there to be room for the bus stations as well as room for the bus to accelerate and decelerate. So the express lanes will move forward and they will be built not to preclude transit. So the gap that we're looking to fill is, this phase two, which is the construction of the station and the land adjacent to have some sort of a park and ride. So the range of that is somewhere between $35 and $44 million. And so that's what we're, here to talk to you about. How can we partner to close that gap? In the scheme of things, it shouldn't be the showstoppers. The other costs that are still sort of hanging out there, you can see under vehicles and other, the biggest one is $25 million for if we were to have sort of special branded vehicles, that's how much they would cost. And I'm really optimistic that there would be federal funding to support that. The Biden administration is very focused on especially electric buses, and I think we would have a really strong case to make in working with Congresswoman McBath's office as well as our two new senators to be able to close that gap and to fill the interest in electric buses. The $7 million above it is for the communication systems so that we can provide the real-time information at the stop. The bus is 2 minutes away, what have you. Turning to we have 3 different ideas to present to you about how this could still happen. And they all have to do with what we call value capture. And that's basically using or allowing the development that will both benefit and support the transit to pay for the infrastructure for it. So the first idea is a tax allocation district. And I know that y'all have talked about this a little bit in the past before. I've seen that it's in your draft strategic plan as something that you would like to explore. So I won't belabor how it works, but essentially you use what we call a tax increment. So you set a baseline of the property tax and create the TAD, and then the increment that the property taxes increase are used to pay off some sort of bonds. And so the way that you have all of the legislative and policy pieces in place, you have the redevelopment authority that the city has. So, there's really nothing to prevent the city from moving forward. Of course, to get the full benefit of the property taxes, more money will be generated if you can partner with Fulton County and Fulton County schools so that their property taxes are treated in the same way. But the next steps would basically be to create a redevelopment plan for a TAD within the city of Roswell and determine how big that TAD was going to be and, how long you want to do it. It can be up to 25 years. So, there would be a little bit more legislation to do and obviously a lot more sort of figuring all of the numbers and pieces out, but you're in a pretty good position to be able to do it if that's of interest to you. So in looking at the area that's already been identified for the park and ride facility, this is an area that seems to have always come up in at least all of the redevelopment documents that I reviewed that you've put together over the years. And this is just, a potential boundary that we looked at. You could draw a bigger one and generate more, or, a lot of the variables are very much within your control, how big the boundary is and what kind of development you want to see there and how much property tax it would generate. So the beautiful thing about this is that you can bond against this revenue. And so one way to do it, or sort of the most advantageous way to do it, would be a contractual revenue bond. So this is where you would pledge city funds against it, in the case that the property tax increase wasn't as great as all of our really smart development attorneys and other advisors would estimate at this point. But sort of the rule of thumb and kind of the idea that we want to leave you with is that for every $1 million of property tax revenue from a TAD, $16 million could be bonded for a 20-year TAD and $19 million if it was a 25-year TAD. And that's scalable. So, if you decided that you want to cover the whole gap of the 35 to 44 million with a TAD, you would just need to, double, find $2 million of property tax revenue roughly in a TAD. The second idea we wanted to throw out there is the idea of a special services district. And this is like a really flexible idea that the Georgia Constitution allows, where you can basically just draw a district and assess either specific fees, a higher millage rate, kind of whatever you want. So the only real rule is that the amount of debt that you issue can't exceed 10% of the assessed value of that taxable property. And you do need a referendum to issue the debt. So for example, the Beltline is, even just today, having public hearings in the city of Atlanta about this. They identified that they are about $350 million short of being able to finish the property acquisition and the construction costs for the trail. And so they figured out that a special services district can generate another $100 million to help begin to close that gap. So I'm just turning it back over to Jacob, who's going to be the real estate whiz on the ground lease revenue idea, which is the third and final idea.
So this is the sort of typical structure that we have at MARTA, which is not too different from the ground leases that you would see, whether institutions like Georgia Tech or Columbia University in Manhattan is one of the largest landowners and has a very, very similar structure. So we use the approximate acreage of the area that Colleen had indicated in yellow to just put together a simple model of what the potential ground lease payment could be on an annual basis. and then looking at the term of 99 years with the overall payments, not including escalations and potential appraisal resets, could amount to close to $39 million over the term of the ground lease. And that's fantastic, from a revenue generation standpoint. We certainly have a robust portfolio of ground leases with attractive credit tenants. But if you go to the next slide, please, Colleen. What we've been looking at and is really bonding against that ground lease revenue. And this is something, it's not a new idea. Many institutions and agencies do this, not only in the U.S. but abroad. But we've actually been investigating this, and it seemed like an interesting model to talk about today, where a lease revenue bond could be created based on the revenue stream from the underlying ground lease. And so, just in terms of, I know we have a lot of finance people on the council, which is refreshing from my perspective, but and I'm happy to answer any questions, but given a certain set of assumptions, we're looking at gross bond proceeds of about $8 million from ground lease payment on an annual basis. That would be $390,000 a year.
Great. So those are the ideas. Summarize. The cost of the land acquisition itself is included in that 35 to 44 million. We would need to figure out who would ultimately own that land and how that would work if that were to be how we move forward. I guess I'll note now that MARTA does not have the power of eminent domain, but of course y'all do. We talked about the vehicle acquisition and the east-west connectivity. So, yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to float these ideas. We're happy to talk about them now, or we know that you have a new economic development director imminently starting, and that this could be perhaps a good project for them and Roswell Inc. And we have a team of experts who we have ready to go if y'all are interested. We're happy to engage them to further study this.
Council, have any questions? Well, I would like to thank MARTA. You've given us a lot of information. Councilmember Hall.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. And actually, this is a question for Jacob. Jacob, you took on the slides for the bus routes and the reassignments or re-looking at them, and suggested that you were going to have a meeting. I just wanted to suggest that perhaps it's a community meeting where you also include the community. We have some very active ridership in our community. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that we're still very upset that number 85 and 142 are not operational. It's extreme hardship for many folks that live in our community that are trying to get back to, back to work now that the economy is coming back. So just wanted to add that.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, can I say two things about that?
Yes.
So the meetings that Jacob mentioned are technical workshops that I believe the Muhammad and Rob and I think Dan, the technical staff of the City of Roswell, have been invited to. There's an extensive public input process as well. So yes, we will certainly be sending you emails about that. And I'm happy to tell you that we'll restore the 58 bus routes that are suspended currently. So we'll be running our full suite of 110 routes on April 24th. We're finishing installing a technology called needlepoint bipolar ionization, which basically kills the virus in the air, which makes us feel comfortable that we can allow a higher number of people on the buses such that we can restore the service. So thank you for your patience. We know it's been extremely difficult on a lot of people, and we're looking forward to restoring all of the routes ourselves.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor Henry. Definitely an interesting conversation. I appreciate it. Basically, just really a comment I have is I'd say, and I guess this is more towards the council, but in the picture and showing, you know, the possible location, et cetera, definitely I feel was picking the right quadrant. We have obviously 4 quadrants where you have Holcomb Bridge and 400 meet, and that northwest quadrant is an area that I think we absolutely need to do more on focusing on how to redevelop the area. There's certainly you know, just there's definitely been a lot of calls for public safety service and really frankly crime that this council needs to, I think, address more. And hopefully when we have the Big Creek Parkway going through there, that is going to create more interest in economic redevelopment and economic development, et cetera. But I just want to raise to the council that, you know, I think it is important. We're constantly looking at how do we really improve the area and make it safer for the many people that live in that quadrant.
Councilmember Wilsey.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for joining us today and for this presentation. And I'm really excited to hear that all those buses will be online with the safety measures by the end of April. I think that's really good news. I had a question, and it's also related to Councilmember Palermo's comments about the Northwest Quadrant and the tax allocation district that you had drawn. In that plan, would the additional taxes be come specifically from that district, or is it simply that that's where they would be directed to redevelopment?
No, you would draw the boundary and the additional taxes from having the amenity transit, the direct access to the bus rapid transit line. And those property taxes would basically pay back the debt that would be issued from the TAD bond, is I guess what we would call it.
So it basically it's a focused effort within that geographic area. The additional taxes come from that geographic area and they go back into it. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Tizer.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Marta, for the presentation. Some really interesting things to think about. You've shown us 3 ways to come up with money for this, and I think I'm not ready yet to give up on the 4th way, which is the piles of money that our friends up in DC are about to unload upon us all. And I think that'd be great if we could find some from that big pile that's coming.
Excellent point.
Councilmember Zapata.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a quick question. Among the 3 options that you explained today, is possible to mix and match, or you have to choose only one option, or you can use 2 or 3 to get to the total needed?
Absolutely possible to mix and match.
Yeah.
Additional questions from council? Well, once again, I would like to thank you all at MARTA for bringing this presentation to us. As I said before, you gave us a lot of information to digest, and we thank you for that and look forward to an open dialogue in the future.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and we are adjourned.
Thank you all.